Hey gang, welcome to our discussion of Microsoft Copilot. We're specifically going to be talking about Copilot in Word, which is just one of the many variants and expressions of what Microsoft considers their UI for AI. Okay, so Copilot is this very large beast of a offering available inside of Microsoft. It is linked to a very powerful set of generative AI capabilities, and it is a really big push within the world of Microsoft to get this in the hands of their customers. And a lot of organizations are considering using Copilot, have already flipped the switch on Copilot, and now it's at a point where the world is starting to realize that we need to skill up and we need to get better with some of these technologies. There are a lot of new ways and new use cases, new workflows that we can leverage generative AI technologies. Copilot is one of a large set of generative AI solutions that enterprises use, but it's also the one that's actually most likely to be sanctioned by your organization. So I'm actually really curious. When I talk to people and I talk to them about, hey, what's your experience level with Copilot? What I actually see is a big difference between their experience, their comfort level with Microsoft Copilot solutions as opposed to something from Google or OpenAI or another technology. Okay, so if you could, on a scale of 1 to 10, just rank yourself. And it's actually okay to say, hey, I'm on the lower side. It's okay to say 1, 2, 3. And if you happen to be on the higher scale, that's great. This is an intro tour to Microsoft Copilot in Word. So if you're a 10, you already know, you feel like you know how to use the product. Okay, so we got a wizard, 1-ish, 2-ish, 3. And actually, I would say most people would probably rank themselves between 1 to 3, which is really kind of interesting because most of you are probably really comfortable with Microsoft Office products in general. Like, you know how to use Word, you know how to use Outlook, you know how to use Teams. You probably rank yourself like 6, 7, 8 with those. But with Microsoft Copilot, we'd rank ourselves quite a bit less. Okay. Thank you, by the way, for responding. I'm curious, what AI tool are you most comfortable with? My guess is you're more comfortable with something from like OpenAI. My background in generative AI started and stayed with OpenAI's solutions for a really long time. And that's ChatGPT. And I've taught a bunch of courses on ChatGPT, delivered a lot of presentations, super duper comfortable with ChatGPT. And I've got it on my phone. It's my go-to. But what's really interesting is there are absolute benefits and strengths of Copilot for business cases, for your real world business use, for your in-office use. And it's not to say that you couldn't do some of these things with another solution, but again, Copilot is the most likely tool to be flipped on for you in your organization. And that means we really should get used to using it. And there are some things and workflows available in Copilot that would be hard, if not impossible, with ChatGPT or a similar solution, especially if you didn't have an integration that was enabled by your IT team. Okay, so I'm not surprised. A lot of people love the other tools. Okay, but Copilot is going to make a lot of inroads in organizations. We better know how to use it. And I do want to share with you, today is going to be demonstration focused. Okay, so I'm going to not talk about the theory of generative AI at all. And I'm going to talk very little about what it takes to just, do the basic stuff. Because I want you to focus on and learn from me use cases. Because really, the challenge that I see is you're out there getting your day-to-day job done, And what you get your day-to-day job done is the existing tools that you use to work, which is probably a web browser, Outlook, Teams, Zoom, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and of course, more proprietary situational tools for whatever your day-to-day job is. But you don't see the ways to use Copilot. You don't yet have exposure to those real-world use cases. And because you don't see those, if you've not been sort of attuned to the opportunity to do something in Copilot instead of doing something with a traditional method, you are not using it to the greatest extent. And it's also possible you just don't have the feature turned on. You might be here just going, I don't even know if this is appropriate for me, appropriate for my organization. That's okay too. But we're going to do like at least 6 of these demonstrations. I'm going to probably descope one of them, but we're going to do a bunch of demonstrations. I do want to be really explicit. This is not a marketing presentation. This is a presentation so you understand what someone who's not affiliated with Microsoft is going to say about their product. I've attended a lot of Microsoft marketing webinars on Copilot. They're pretty marketing centric, and it's hard to get a little bit of meat off of the bone there. Here's what I personally, through my experience with this, I'm going to tell you about it. It's got a pretty good model already. The GPT-4 engine is pretty good. What that means is it's not nearly as good as Gemini's best model. It's not nearly as good as OpenAI's best model, but it's pretty good. And Microsoft will soon switch to a very, very good hyper-competitive model, okay? So it's good enough to use. GPT-4 is absolutely good enough to use. What makes it different and what makes it so useful to a real-world work case is it's integrated into OneDrive and SharePoint. And you might think, well, you know, I'm not a SharePoint person and I don't love OneDrive. Here's the deal. What that means is it's able to work with your files. And most of the demonstrations that we're going to be using are going to show how it actually works with your files. And that is, and it's not just your files. It can be emails. It can be meetings that you've had, and it can go beyond that. That's the real capability, and it does that with the same security that is offered by Microsoft for SharePoint and OneDrive. So they rigorously enforce the security of this. OpenAI has similar sorts of capabilities, but your IT team is going to be much less excited about a full integration of your SharePoint, your OneDrive to OpenAI. Okay, I think that's just, you shouldn't be shocked by that. I find it's not great at everything. Like the image generation model is like old school. It's not as good as what you can get with other things. But here's the biggest caveat that everybody, I think, actually should be talking about right now. And that is, people are just not used to using it. They're not used to using it for the real cases. And if you take a casual attempt at using Copilot, you could actually be turned off because you're probably not using it where it shines, okay? And it absolutely can shine. I'm going to show you some things that are like, wow, there might be actually teams in my organization that are actually going to use the heck out of this, okay? And so the workflows are unique, and it's just, you know, it just takes getting used to. Now, here are some use cases so that I want to and we're going to expose these, okay? So in some demonstration environments, in some sort of presentations, I've seen people just author and draft with Copilot. And what drafting really is just spitting out text from the large language model that drives Copilot. That's kind of uninteresting because you're not framing it based on certain things. Okay, now we're going to tune and generate output that is referencing our own internal documentation. That gets a lot more interesting. You can change the tone of a document. You could like say, hey, I want to make this for 5th graders. I want to make this for adults. Language models are really good for things like that. Here's what is really cool, though. Let's say you have an article that gets dumped on your plate and you're asked to read it, and you're asked to read it before a meeting. Okay, a lot of times executives, managers, they have to read something and spin up on something. You can summarize documents really well. You can ask questions of documentation really well, so that you can process information in a much more aggressive, much more efficient way. You can flesh out documents from breadcrumbs, meaning, let's say you wanted to create a story or an article. You could have the scaffolding for that article and just quick, like 3 words here, 3 words here, 3 words here. And then you could say, expand on each of these in this discussion of X. And it can absolutely do that. But here's where it actually, and here's where the bulk of today is going to be. It is going to be about creating or affecting output based on other resources. And it's incredibly powerful to be able to reference other documents. And you could revise documents. We're going to get into this sort of thing, demonstrations, but I want you to understand that's where the strength is. It's not like that's not a straightforward thing, like creating documents from other documents. It sounds weird, but we're going to show you it's actually applicable to a lot of people's work days, okay? Now, if you've attended a Microsoft presentation on Copilot, what you would have seen is a lot of discussion of good prompting practice. And I've certainly taught courses on prompting and prompt engineering, like to a certain extent. And, I have courses on prompting. That's probably not the most important thing to get out of learning Microsoft Copilot. However, here are the 4 different constructs to make your prompt good. You want to give it a direction. You want to give it a goal. Okay, you want to elicit something that's going to spit out. Just like all of the other generative AI tools, you want to say, I have a goal. I want to create a picture of a cat, or I want to create a document on X. Okay, then you want to indicate the context. Here's the audience. Here's why I need this. And I'm going to skip down to expectations because source is the most important. Expectations. I need this to be 300 words long. I need this to do X, Y, Z. But finally, the referencing capability is the most important. And that is the term I am going to use because that is the capability inside of Copilot that we're going to leverage most heavily today. And there is a lot of complexity to Copilot, okay? We're here talking about Copilot in Word, okay? And this is the last slide before we basically spend the rest of the day in demonstrations. In Word, you can reference. So this is where you are, okay? We're in Word. You can reference 3 documents. You could reference other Word documents. You could reference PowerPoint. Note, you cannot reference Excel files, but you could reference PDF, emails, meetings in Teams and things like that. And, the other 2 aren't that important. Okay, so what we're going to be doing, let's do some demonstrations. Let's have some fun. I'm going to jump into Copilot now for the rest of the day. And we're just going to hang out here and have some fun. Okay, so first, just a little bit of getting around your interface. So I think we can all agree we are in Word, okay? That is the platform that we're going to be talking about today. And there's 2 different interfaces inside of Word for Copilot, and they definitely have different use cases. That's one of the weirdest things about Copilot is it's so complex and it's a little bit different, okay? So I can hit this button on the right-hand side, which brings up what is called the Copilot pane, okay? Pane, like window pane. And this is a side conversation, if you will, about the document. So if you want to have a conversation about the document, you could ask questions about the document, or you theoretically could generate draft information here, although that's not the best way to do it. So you could ask questions. We're going to use this a lot. However, the most useful part for me personally of Copilot is actually the inline function. So two different things. You got inline, and then you got the pane. Okay, so when you do it inside of the document, I actually think this is really cool. And this is really assuming that it's going to create information, output information inside of your document. Okay, so now that we've got that, I want to do my first demonstration that I've cooked up today. And we're going to go into meeting notes. That was actually from a real meeting that I had this week. Okay, so I've redacted the names of this. And yeah, so I was a subject matter expert in a marketing meeting that people were interviewing me, asking for, not save that. I was being asked, hey, I want you to explain to me best practices for IT certifications and things like that. Okay, so I want you to think that when you have meetings, you absolutely can create inside of Teams meetings and also Zoom meetings, meeting notes. Okay, and a lot of the meeting applications, the meeting platforms like Teams and Zoom generate meeting notes. Okay, so here are the meeting notes from this meeting. And the whole discussion was the person in the marketing organization had to create a blog. And they were interviewing me from, and I have experience in IT certifications and things like that. And so they're interviewing me, asking questions. And this is the dump from artificial intelligence that was from the meeting notes. It's not a blog, but it's just all the notes and some kind of conglomeration and things like that. Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into a fresh document. Now let's look up here. Okay. So Copilot demo blog discussion. Okay. So I'm going to go to a new document and we're going to reference that document. Okay. So the first thing that is going to really empower you in Copilot is I want you to understand that you can reference things. And by things, it's Word files, PDFs, PowerPoints, emails. That's most of it, okay? So the key trigger is the slash. The slash, like on the question mark key, is a special keystroke that brings this up. Now, first, yeah, you can see right there. So I'm going to hit that again. And then I'm going to say blog discussion. Okay, now notice I am in a blank Word document. Okay, so I have now given context and reference information to be able to pull from for a prompt. And I could say the following. Now I'm going to actually prompt, okay? And I've prompted including source. So that's my source. You know, the 4 different constructs for a prompt that I showed. You don't have to remember all 4, but that's one of them. That's the source, okay? So I could say, hey, we just had a meeting on IT certifications. Please create a marketing blog on IT certs from this discussion. Keep it to, let's say, 500 words. And let's go. Okay. So I'm going to hit the send button, you know, basically kick this off. But what I have done is I've said, and notice this is a flat, empty document, but I want you to think about the person who is interviewing me, okay? The person who is interviewing me is going to have to spend a lot of time decoding what I said, and then building a usable marketing product from it, okay? So let's actually take on that role of the marketing person, and it is now generating this marketing blog from meeting notes. Okay. Now, we're still kind of cutting our teeth on using Copilot. Okay, so I want to give you sort of a little bit of comfort here. I'm going to take myself off screen because I want you to see the entirety of that interface. Okay, so here you can see at the bottom my prompt. Okay, so this is a shortened version of my prompt that you can see. And, I can click on that and it will expand that. Okay. But I'm going to hit cancel because now what I want you to understand is the way to have conversation about what was just created. Okay. So this is a little bit different than how Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini work. Okay. Because what we can now do is we can affect what was generated without having to regenerate it from scratch. Okay. So this is a fine tune. This is my way of fine tuning. So I could say, too long, make it 100 words. It's probably not actually going to be that useful if it's 100 words, but we're going to send it on its way. And the reality is LLMs are really, really good about following guidance such as this. And so you can see I didn't have to create a net new prompt. I affected what was there. So I can go back to my initial prompt. So if I wholesale got it wrong, I'm probably going to focus on my initial prompt. But if I'm close to getting it right, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick in the fine-tuning area. So this was my first sort of learning lesson working with Copilot. It's a little bit different because most of the other engines for generative AI and text work the same way. You have conversations and you keep those conversations rolling. So this is a different workflow than the other generative AI tools. So I want to demonstrate that as we go along, okay? So by the way, you can call that up. There's a keystroke. It's Alt-I. So you can call up the inline Copilot at any time. And it's a little odd, okay? If you're in a document, notice this little Copilot icon follow you. And it's like, let's say you're not using Copilot at all, and this is going to get really, really infuriating because, it just follows, and it's like a confusing part. But Microsoft confuses us all the time with changes to their interfaces. We just got to deal with it. But that allows me to bring up the Copilot interface, the inline Copilot interface, and it's very, very powerful when we do that. And we highlight an area, okay? So be mindful of if you're highlighting something or if you're not highlighting something. So if you're not highlighting something, it's not really referencing a portion of the document. However, if you highlight it and then hit that button, now what you are prompting is there to affect what you are highlighting. Okay, so that's so much different of a workflow already than what we are used to. Okay. All right. So let's see here. I do want to go back to that document. Okay, I want to show you something really cool. Okay, so I've shown you a little bit about the Copilot inline. I want to show you Copilot pane again, but not in this document, okay? I'm just going to not save that because that was just sample output. Now I kicked off the Copilot pane, and you do have to give this a little bit of time to bake. And it's baking because it is trying to prepare tailored initial suggested prompts based on the document that you're in. Okay. Now there's a really new, what I think is a very subtle, kind of gimmicky function that has a lot of merit. It is really, really exciting. And it's such a different thing. Okay. So I want you to see this. Generate audio overview from this document. This was first exposed. This is pretty new, by the way. This has like only been out a few weeks. And this is capable in a few other Copilot applications as well. What it's going to do is it's going to create an audio blog between two people about the document that you're in. Okay? So it literally would generate two people talking about your document. Okay? So I'm going to hit this, and it's going to generate. It's like wicked fast for what it's actually doing. Okay, so it's generating a 2-voice demonstration, and hopefully I'm sharing my audio from this particular computer into the stream so you get a chance to see it. Okay, I'm actually surprised it's already taking this long. It's usually pretty quick, but I do want that to actually bake. Okay. So let's see. Okay. You guys can't hear that, right? Yeah, I can't see it right now. But give me a moment, okay? I'm just going to go to my PowerPoint really quick. And I'm going to make sure that I'm sharing the right way. Share my audio. Capture audio. Oh, shoot. It's on, but it's not working. I don't think I can fix it right now. It's a little bit of a drag. I might just have to speak about what it's actually doing. Okay. Go back over there. And what was my... Yeah, here's where it was. Okay, so I'm going to hit pause. Okay, so created an audio discussion. And this is something, notice it's 6 minutes. So it is something where I've seen it generate 11, 12-minute discussions. The voices are pretty good. They say quite a bit. Okay, they say quite a bit, which is a little bit distracting, but the voices are pretty good. And here's the use case that I think it's available for. Okay, the use case is, let's say you are a person who likes to listen to a lot of podcasts, and you have to spin up on something. You were given a documentation. You could generate an audio podcast for the document. This could actually be something that's really, really nice to prepare, especially if you have a commute. Okay. So the discussion can be saved to your OneDrive. You could actually load this up in your car, and it's pretty good. The audio isn't coming through. Just want to hit that one more time. Yeah, it just doesn't want to come through. So apologize. Oh, wait. No. Yeah, that's just going to have to be a limitation. But I would encourage you to think. This is a little bit of a parlor trick, a little bit of a little gimmick, but it also is something that could be super useful. Especially, I'm going to use it when I have to spin up on something. Okay, so it's kind of a cool little thing. Okay, so that was the first little demo. I want to go to a very different kind of document, because what I'm trying to capture in this is the variety that exists in our day-to-day applications. Okay, so people use Word for very, very different things, and their general tasks can be quite a bit different. Okay, so I'm going to open up a control meeting. Okay. Yeah. So here's the meeting notes from a control meeting that that I generated this control meeting. Now, you might be thinking, what is this? This is so much different than what I have to work with. Okay, so I want you to understand that I think we can all agree all of our jobs are super duper different, right? And sometimes we have meetings that get like super hyper specific, super hyper focused, um, and we get into proprietary discussions about things, and uh, and what we do is such a snowflake compared to the what somebody else has to do. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you one of the sort of things that they advertise about what Copilot in Word is good at. And we can see this document has a lot of just, let's say this is meeting notes. And these meeting notes are not really easy to process, okay? So if we were to dump this to someone, it'd be like, man, I don't appreciate this because I can't even like really read the output. And so this is kind of a cool little functionality inside of Copilot. We're going to use the inline function. I'm going to highlight this, okay? So we can see what is highlighted, and you can see that I've got the little Copilot button over here, okay? So I'm going to hit that. And it gives me some things that I can do. The visualize as a table is a little bit one of the gimmicky things that is pretty well advertised about Copilot in Word. And it's a functionality that you could actually overuse because in some cases you might not, it'll visualize anything as a table, but sometimes the data itself is not well or conducive to that sort of thing. But I'm going to hit this visualize as a table. And it is going to go through this kind of really, really opaque information. And it is going to translate it to a lot more readable information. Now, this is something that a project manager would want to be able to output. And a lot of these are details and metrics that a project manager would care about. I'm certified in project management. We used to really teach like controlling the schedule and controlling the budget. And SPI and CPI are the ways that we do that, okay? So it generated this table. Now, right now, it actually doesn't look great. And it doesn't look great because it's probably got too many columns, okay? So what I can actually do is I can revise this, okay? So remember that the initial prompt kind of triggers what is going to be done, but I can fine tune it and I can say, drop off the owner column and next steps column. I often misspell column. Forgive me. It's just one of the things that I do. And what I did though is I tried to clean it up. And so what's really, really cool is you can actually tell it what to do. And it will do a super good job at affecting things like what columns you want, what rows you want. And then I could say, reduce the number of words in cells to the minimum. Still doesn't look great because it's like just too much there that we're trying to squeeze in. So we're using a Copilot to just say, hey, I want to take this data, and it's going to start to look a little bit better. And so now I want you to just think that if you had to email your boss something, and you might actually take this table, put it in an email, you might say, okay, this is good summary information that they might be looking at if this is the sort of thing that they truly care about, right? Every boss is, you're going to have to disseminate different information to different people. Okay. Now, here's where we can start to leverage the expertise of Copilot. Okay. If you recall, there's Copilot inline, which is what we just did. We were working with that. Then there's Copilot pane. I'm going to call that back up. Okay. So again, we could generate the audio overview. You could say, I got to listen to this on the way to work. Didn't have time to read it. But I want to show you something really, really cool. Okay, so I could ask questions such as, what are the biggest risks in this project? Okay, I want you to think about all the times that you were given information, and sometimes we don't even have training for the information that we're given. Let's just say we were thrust into the project management role, and we don't have any formal training. Or you're trying to get up to speed and work with something that's kind of a stretch for you, okay? So I'm asking something that is looking for insight into this document. So I'm going to hit this. And this is the sort of thing that because I'm asking questions about this document, I'm going to do this in the pane, in the thing on the right-hand side, okay? And so let's look this over. Okay, so the biggest risk for this project. Okay, so managers, it kind of doesn't matter what level of manager you are, you should be thoughtful about the risks. You might be a manager of people and you worry about the risks of losing some of the people in your, in your staff, or you are IT security and you worry about risks to the security compromise of systems and things like that, or business level risks if you're an executive. So in this case, this is super useful, okay? Because this document is just as sort of, it's not good. It's not an easy read. It's just people who are in the weeds. You know, when people start to speak their own language because they've been doing this sort of thing, that happens in most organizations, right? And they have a lot of familiarity with terminology. They're just talking really, really specific details. And so here you could be on the outside looking in. You could go, okay, so there's a risk, and you can see there's some checksum thing with there's risk there, and I could say, what is the biggest risk? So you could keep on asking questions about a documentation, about a document. I was thinking, think about all those times when you're asked to read something, get up to speed, and I said, yeah, you could use the generate audio capability. But I also want you to think, let's just say you're trying to spin up on something yourself, and you get that into a document form. You could ask questions. Hey, I'm this kind of person. What is the significance of this document for me? What does this say about X? And so it can aggressively parse the information within a document. And this is tremendously empowering for us. And it's just not something we're used to. We're used to just doing this the hard way. And it's not to say that you should, leverage AI and divest yourself from reading things. But it is really, really nice to be able to ask questions about a document. Okay? Really, really nice to be able to do. Okay? Now I want to show you what I think is actually the most powerful use case. It's a little bit of a tricky demonstration, but I actually think there are entire teams in every single organization that could be transformed by this workflow that I'm going to show. And it's not meant as hyperbole, but I want to go into something. I am in the world of IT security. In terms of, I often get documentation or have to fill out security questionnaires. Okay, so we're going to go to this guy right here. Okay. So think about, yeah, we're perfect timing. Just got to maximize that. Okay. So think about those times when you have to fill out documentation. So one of the things that lands on my desk is security questionnaires like this. Okay, I have, there are really good people that report to me that actually fill this out. But these sorts of questionnaires or applications for things are the jobs of certain people in organizations. And, this is a specific one for a security questionnaire, but I want you to think, what if you are using this for personal use and you are applying to colleges or applying for financial aid to colleges, or work cases, you're applying for a grant, you're applying for an award, you're applying for some sort of established thing that requires you to fill out a document. There are procurement teams, and there's teams that work with filling out what are called RFPs. Okay, so we get RFPs all the time. We're a business, and we're trying to respond to requests for proposals. And so you have to fill out all this information. So it's just the nature of the beast. You gotta answer and fill in the blanks on documents. I think we can all agree about that, right? Okay, so this is unanswered. What I'm gonna do is this. First, I'm gonna go to a blank document, and I'm going to call up, just like using it this way, please give me an answer key for, okay. So I am referencing a document. Notice I use the slash. We're in Copilot inline. We're going to use the slash, and we're going to do the security questionnaire. So I want an answer key for the security questionnaire using, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to just generically fill that out. That would be super uninteresting, okay? Because you couldn't legitimately do that. But my team has an answer key already, or it has a big security policy document. So I'm going to say, let's hope I can get the security policy document right there. Okay, so we've got a security policy. So these are two separate things. So every organization needs a security policy document, right? It's required these days. And if it's really, really good, it probably has the answer to most of the questions that are going to be in the questionnaire, okay? I want you to think about how empowering this sort of thing could be. What if you are a team of people that just respond to RFPs all the time, and you're filling out, forms and things like that? It's actually kind of exhausting. And it's really nice if you can just be given the answer key. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And all of these questionnaires look different. Like this security questionnaire, I've seen security questionnaires in 30 different formats. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's new. And this one has 3 times the number of questions I've ever seen. Okay, anyways, I'm going to do security policy. So I'm referencing 2 different documents. One is sort of the questions that need answering, and the other is how we are going to answer those questions based on our own internal documentation. It's pretty cool. Okay, so boom, 2 different things, and this can come in a few different ways. Okay, good. Okay, so now it is answering and it's providing this document. And it's gonna take time. Notice it says working on it. Okay, so it is actually still going through. It's probably gonna complete by the time I get to the bottom. Okay, no, it's still going. Cool. Okay, so the challenge with the security document is that we get them fast and furious in IT. And these IT people probably would rather be doing other things. Each one probably takes between 90 minutes and 3 hours to complete. How long did that take? It didn't take very long, right? And you might go, well, I don't know if that's very useful because it let me show you. Okay, let me show you the form that it's trying to fill out. So I'm going to go back to the top here. I personally think this is super cool. So it's got 1.1 policies, 1.2, and it's telling us this yes is this one right here. So it's saying to tell us yes, 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 yes. So you see 4 yeses. Yes, 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 yes. And we just go through. And so you could much more rapidly fill out applications for things, questionnaires, and completely streamline the workflow of an entire team this way. This is why I think Copilot in Word and Copilot in general, this kind of capability of tying to your files, working with those files securely, is so empowering. Because although it didn't, and it can't just embed and spread its information. Like, did you notice that I didn't ask it to fill it out inside of the document? It doesn't work that way. Like, if I were to have done the same thing inside of this document, it would have just plopped it all in a big block. It would not have sprinkled it in the individual cells. So it's not that good yet, right? It isn't like smart enough to understand that we would wish that it would fill out and put the effort in. That would be a little bit more agentic than we have right now. But it is still a massive enabler. I'm just literally going to be copying and pasting. I'm still going to have to look this over. And you might say, all right, now I'm going to have people that fill it out this way. We're going to do a review cycle, work a little bit differently, because you cannot just trust implicitly generative AI output, right? If we're doing an audio blog, the risk is low. But if we're doing a security questionnaire, we have to validate it. We have to have oversight. That's absolutely true. But the act of filling it out based on documentation is rooted in our own documentation. And Copilot does a pretty good job already of avoiding hallucinations when it has the foundational material. Okay. Here's the thing that I think is the biggest risk. You are asked a question that is not detailed in the security policy document. And so I could ask it questions. I could go through cycles to say, hey, which of these questions are not addressed formally in the security policy document? Then I could actually go back to the security policy documentation team, feed that in, say, please affect your security policy document to answer these questions. And therefore, we can do continuous improvement on that sort of thing and make this a better process even than what we have right now. Okay. So we got the security policy. Yeah. So want to go over some very sort of straightforward use cases that are pretty just not to be missed. So I'm going to go into this document right here. This is a big old article. Let's say you have to, you download a PDF on something that is technical in nature, technical in terms of like, hey, it's deep information that is relevant to you. You've got to spin up on it. This is a great opportunity to use some of the capabilities inside of Copilot. For instance, I haven't even showed you like the most basic thing, but it's actually pretty cool. Okay, so here we've got a document about generative AI. Let's just say I have to spin up on this document. It's 14 pages long. And executives and managers, you know, they're in the business world, if you're in an organization, there's like a lot of encouragement for reading. But sometimes you're encouraged to read more books than your schedule allows. And of course, you can manage your schedule and things like that. But what you could do is you could say, hey, give me the meat of this. Okay, so there's always the capability inside of Copilot to generate summaries. And so here in the very first page, this happens for any document that you open up. It just generates this. It just assumes you don't want to read it. So it's going to give you the TLDR. The too long didn't read. And so this is still pretty long, right? But this is the summary. Okay. This is the summary. It's basically a one-pager. And so you can do this for anything. It kind of doesn't really care how big a file you have. So if you've got a PDF or a Word document, it's like 100 pages long, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is just going to take me too long. I'm sweating bullets. I don't have enough time to even read this. And I've attended so many different like manager meetings where we're assigned reading, and a fraction of the people do the reading. Okay, this is a use case. Some people don't care about how loaded up we are. Okay, so that's one way to go. But you could also call up the Copilot, and then you could ask it like specific things. Okay, let's just say I downloaded this. I don't know if it says anything about like HR. Okay, so I'm going to ask it a question about this. So I'm going to say, what does this say about onboarding and use of AI in that solution? And so it's going to read it for you effectively. Okay. So there's significant impact on human resources. So if we're like an HR person, like this would make our job easier. Now it's going to tell us, and it's going to cite the areas where it is pulling it from. Okay. So the source is the document that I have open. And so I'm going to hit this little plus, and this is where it like pulled from. So this is a conglomeration of the text that is relevant to the prompt that I had about, HR, onboarding, and AI. Okay. So I can click on that and see where in the document it is. Okay. So I'm going to say, you can see a little bit of the call outs. Oh yeah, I want to read that. So I clicked on it, and I can go down to the section that is relevant for that particular area. So that's really useful. So it's going to streamline your workflow when you have to process a large amount of data. You could ask it questions about, hey, I'm IT security. What should I be thinking about? Or I'm a finance person. Or what are the risks here? And that sort of functionality would be done inside of the Copilot pane. Okay. So there's a fair number of different use cases for Copilot in Word. And when I was putting this together, this presentation together, I chose Copilot in Word because it's actually one of the most subtle applications of Copilot. Okay, so there's Copilot Chat, which is actually the most complicated of all, although it looks really, really simple. The MS365 Copilot has the ability to load in agents and build agents really, really well. And so I thought, Copilot in Word is going to be, pretty straightforward. But I want you to understand that just this small piece of the Copilot puzzle, there's Copilot in Outlook, Copilot in Teams, but the small piece of the puzzle is truly able, because we all work in Word. I mean, it kind of doesn't matter what role we have in an organization. We are very, very likely to be spending some of our time in Word. I've generated, thousands of Word documents in my business career. Okay. I don't even want to know. And certainly had to open a bunch from other people too, right? And so this is a really sort of good foothold in getting comfortable with a tool that is actually not that easy to use. But please understand, just because it is not easy doesn't mean it's not powerful. It's not easy because we're not used to the workflows. None of those things that I showed are the same thing in Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, right? Fundamentally, those workflows were quite a bit different. So I hope you got something out of it.